As the spirit begins to reorganize, something subtle yet decisive happens. Irritation stops occupying the center of the inner experience. It does not vanish magically, nor does it disappear completely from life, but it loses its place of command. The spirit gains more space. And where there is space, there is choice. This shift is essential for understanding the healing of the diseases of the spirit. The goal is not to eliminate emotions but to restore inner order. Emotions exist to serve life. When they begin to rule it, something becomes disordered. Healed irritation is not the absence of reaction, but the presence of discernment. A maturing spirit learns to recognize its own limits before being forced by them. It learns to notice the early signs of tension before they turn into an explosion. It learns to interrupt the automatic response. This learning does not happen through isolated willpower, but through a process of continuous awareness. Here the importance of inner vigilance becomes clear. Vigilance not in the sense of rigidity or excessive control, but in the sense of attention. Attention to what is happening within, attention to one's own thoughts, attention to the interpretations that arise automatically. The renewed mind, as Romans 12 proposes, is a mind that watches itself. This observation creates an interval between stimulus and response. And that interval is the space of freedom. The smaller the interval, the more automatic the reaction. The greater the interval, the greater the possibility of choice. Irritation rules when there is no interval. Transformation begins when the interval expands. Developing this interval requires practice. It requires slowing down. It requires the willingness not to answer immediately. It requires accepting that not everything must be resolved right now. This acceptance is deeply countercultural. We live in a culture of rapid answers, instant reactions, immediate opinions. The mature spirit moves in the opposite direction. It holds the silence. Holding silence is not passivity. It is inner strength. It is the ability to remain present without being carried away by impulse. It is recognizing that reality is broader than the first interpretation. It is allowing other layers to reveal themselves before action. At that point, irritation begins to be replaced by something more solid. Gentleness. Gentleness is not weakness. It is inner mastery. It is strength that does not need to prove anything. It is security that does not depend on winning arguments. It is firmness that is not confused with aggressiveness. Gentleness grows as the spirit makes peace with the human condition. Limits stop being personal insults and become facts of reality. Failures stop being humiliations and become opportunities to learn. Differences stop being threats and become part of life together. This movement requires humility, not artificial humility but lucid humility. The humility that recognizes, I do not control everything. I do not understand everything. I do not need to react to everything. This humility is liberating. It removes an enormous weight from the spirit, the burden of having to sustain an idealized image of oneself. Many irritations are born precisely from the constant effort to sustain an image. A person becomes irritated because they feel they must defend their position, their competence, their authority, their value. When inner value is not settled, any questioning is experienced as a threat. The mature spirit does not need to defend itself all the time. Here an important cycle closes. Irritation decreases when the spirit finds value within itself without depending on constant approval. This inner security is not arrogance, it is rootedness. It is knowing who you are, with limits and with possibilities. It is not needing to prove that in every interaction. Romans 12 continues to offer keys to this process by speaking of presenting the body as a living sacrifice. This image suggests availability, surrender, openness to the process. To present the body in this context is to accept that transformation involves the whole person. Thoughts, emotions, habits, rhythm of life. Irritation is also linked to rhythm. Accelerated rhythms, overloaded schedules, and a lack of pauses feed inner tension. A spirit that is constantly rushed becomes irritable. Reducing irritation inevitably requires reviewing the rhythm of life, not as a luxury but as a spiritual necessity. That review includes learning to say no, accepting limits of time and energy, recognizing when fatigue is shaping reactions. Many explosions are not born from real conflicts, but from accumulated exhaustion. A tired spirit loses the capacity to elaborate, and when elaboration fails, irritation takes control. Caring for the spirit, therefore, involves caring for the body, for time, and for inner space. It involves creating regular moments of recollection, not to escape reality but to reorganize our relationship with it. These moments can take many forms: silence, writing, reflective reading, contemplation, prayer. Once again, it is important to emphasize, this is not about imposing a single practice. What matters is consistency. Small, regular moments of interiorization have more impact than large, sporadic efforts. The spirit reorganizes itself through the repetition of experiences of presence. In that space of presence, irritation begins to reveal its hidden messages. It points to where expectations are excessive, where wounds remain unprocessed, where fear has not been acknowledged. Listening to those messages does not mean obeying irritation, but understanding what it is trying to communicate. When the spirit learns to listen to itself, irritation loses its function. It no longer needs to shout because it has been heard. This is crucial. Many intense reactions exist because something inside is not being listened to. When listening happens, intensity decreases. Inner listening also makes listening to others easier. A less irritated spirit becomes more available for dialogue, not because it agrees with everything, but because it does not feel constantly threatened. True listening opens space for more honest and less defensive relationships. Reconciliation with the past remains a central element in this process. Many present irritations are reactivations of old pain. Current situations touch old wounds and trigger disproportionate reactions. Working through those wounds requires patience and often guidance. It is not a process resolved by willpower alone. Forgiveness again appears as an instrument of liberation, not a rushed forgiveness that ignores pain, but a mature forgiveness that acknowledges what was lived and chooses not to carry the weight any longer. The spirit that forgives recovers vital energy previously trapped in resentment. Along this path, it is important to accept that the process is not linear. There will be days of greater clarity and days of relapse. This does not invalidate transformation. The measure is not the total absence of irritation, but the reduction of its force and frequency. Progress is measured by how quickly the spirit returns to center after being disturbed. Irritation loses ground when the spirit develops trust. Trust in oneself, trust in the process, trust in life. This trust does not remove difficulties, but it changes how we pass through them. A trusting spirit does not despair in the face of the unexpected. It adapts. Here we find one of the most important fruits of the renewal of the mind, the ability to discern the will of God. Discernment is not receiving ready-made answers, but perceiving which attitude produces more life, more truth, more integration. Irritation rarely leads to such discernment. It narrows the field of vision. The renewed mind expands it. The closing of this process happens when the spirit stops defining itself by emotional states. I am irritated stops meaning I am this way. Identity moves from the state to the process. The person begins to see themselves as someone on a path, being transformed, maturing, growing. This shift is liberating. It allows a person to pass through difficult emotions without getting lost in them. It allows irritation to be recognized without identity being fused to it. It allows choices that align more deeply with one's highest values. At this final point, it is useful to remain for a few moments in silence, not to chase a specific feeling, but to allow everything that was addressed to find its place. Integration happens in inner time, not in external hurry. If this text was lived as reflection, may it continue to reverberate. If it was lived as interiorization, may its effects deepen. If it was lived as prayer, may the spirit remain open to ongoing transformation. Irritation is one of the diseases of the spirit. It is not the end of the story. It is an invitation to maturity. A call to inner reorganization. A sign that the spirit is asking for more space, more truth, more presence. The path does not end here. It simply becomes more conscious. We have now arrived at a deeper point in the journey. After recognizing, understanding, and naming irritation as one of the diseases of the spirit, a quiet question naturally rises within us. What do we do with everything that has been revealed? Because understanding is not enough. Identifying patterns is not enough. Recognizing reactions is not enough. What is seen must be welcomed. What is welcomed must be surrendered. And what is surrendered can finally be transformed. This moment does not require haste. It does not require ready-made answers. It requires presence. If possible, allow yourself to slow down now. Perhaps close your eyes. Perhaps simply relax your body. Perhaps simply breathe more consciously. You do not need to produce anything. You do not need to feel something specific. Simply be. Irritation often arises precisely from the inability to be, to remain, to sustain what is imperfect without reacting immediately. That is why this moment in itself is already an act of healing. There is a space within us that is rarely visited, a space where defenses dissolve, where we do not need to prove anything, where we do not need to justify our reactions. It is in this space that the spirit begins to reorganize. And it is in this space that we can, with honesty, recognize, I became more irritated than I would like. I reacted when I could have listened. I defended myself when I could have been silent. I hardened when I could have been flexible. Not as accusation, but as truth. Truth does not diminish us before God. It draws us near. Lord God, here we are with an open spirit, not to condemn ourselves, but to allow ourselves to be touched. We acknowledge before you that irritation found space within us. It entered through the cracks of fatigue, through wounds left untreated, through frustrated expectations, through the difficulty of accepting limits. Today we do not hide it. Today we do not rationalize it. Today we do not defend ourselves. We simply present it. Your word invites us. Present your bodies as a living sacrifice. And we present not only the body, but the tired spirit, the confused mind, the tense heart. We present our automatic reactions, our disordered impulses, our difficulty waiting. All of this, Lord, we place before you. Many times we become irritated, because we want to control what does not belong to us, because we want immediate answers, because we demand from ourselves more than we can sustain. Teach us to let go. Teach us to trust when we do not understand. Teach us to accept when we cannot change. Teach us to rest when we have done what was possible. Do not be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewal of your mind. Renew our minds, Lord. Renew the way we interpret life. Renew the way we respond to frustrations. Renew the way we deal with failure, ours and others. Where there was rigidity, bring flexibility. Where there was harshness, bring gentleness. Where there was reaction, bring discernment. Irritation was often the language we used when we did not know how to speak of pain, when we did not know how to speak of fear, when we did not know how to speak of fatigue. Today we ask for something deeper. Teach us a new inner language, a language that can say, I am tired. I need help. That hurt me. That was too much for me. Because when we learn to name, we no longer need to wound. Lord, touch now the roots of our irritation. Where it was born from old wounds, bring healing. Where it was born from unrealistic demands, bring truth. Where it was born from fear of losing control, bring trust. Where it was born from wounded pride, bring humility that sets free. We renounce in this moment the habit of reacting before understanding. We renounce the need to win arguments. We renounce the illusion that strength is aggressiveness. We choose another way. We choose slow transformation. We choose the maturing of the spirit. We choose the gentleness that rises from inner security. May your spirit teach us to notice the first signs of tension before they become an explosion. Teach us to pause, to breathe, to wait. Teach us to create space between what we feel and what we do. In that space, freedom is born. Lord, bless our relationships. Where irritation created distance, bring reconciliation. Where harsh words were spoken, bring humility to repair. Where silence wounded, bring courage to speak with love. May we be a safe presence, not a source of fear. Bless also our rhythm. Teach us to respect limits. Teach us to rest without guilt. Teach us to accept that we do not need to solve everything today, because a hurried spirit becomes an irritable spirit. Give us the rhythm of wisdom. Today we declare with quiet confidence. Irritation will no longer rule our spirit. It will not define who we are. It will not decide our responses. We are a spirit on a journey, maturing, being transformed. Remain for a few moments in silence. Do not try to conclude anything. Do not try to feel something. Simply allow the spirit to settle. Healing from the diseases of the spirit happens in abiding, not in hurry. May peace find space within you. May gentleness grow. May transformation continue. Amen. If something stirred within you today, don't ignore it. This stirring is a sign that the mind has begun to awaken. What we have seen here does not end now. It has merely opened a door. Something deeper is already waiting. Something that often hides behind irritability and must be recognized with the same honesty. Tomorrow we continue. In episode 2, return. Stay on this path. For those who have the courage to look inward, discover that transformation happens step by step. Until tomorrow.